He was already halfway through Dil Se, and luckily for me, I was included in the last schedule of the film. Shah Rukh sir gets this phone call from Manisha, and we are supposed to give off-camera lines. I froze. Absolutely fabulous geniuses across generations. And one of the important milestones was the debut of Mr. Rahman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Take Me Back to the 90s podcast, where we journey back to the golden era of 90s. My guest today is someone who wears many hats. He is a writer, producer, director, storyteller, and has been an integral part of some of the biggest films in Indian cinema. If you have loved OK Kanmani, Chika Chivantuvanam, Pony and Sylvan, then you have experienced his work. Please welcome Siva Ananth. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was reading about you, about your journey, and saw that you joined Mr. Mani Ratnam on the sets of Dil Se. Could you take us back and share how it all started and how did it all begin? What led you into the world of cinema?
I grew up down south in a place called Madurai, which is 45 kilometers south of Madurai. So I grew up watching Tamil movies naturally, but I was aware of some very big names that were pan India already, like Amitabh Bachchan, for example. I think I grew up in an era of Indira Gandhi, Amitabh Bachchan, and Sunil Gavaskar. I mean, everybody knew those names. So eventually, I went to Rajasthan to do my bachelor's in BITS Pilani, and I started watching a lot of Hindi movies as well. The music of the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, when I started my undergrad, kind of connected everything in my life with film music. So there was a song for happiness, there was a song for sorrow, there was a song for inspiration, and there was a song for fun. Uh, from the mid 80s onwards, there was a distinctly evolved grammar in Tamil cinema brought in by Mr. Mani Ratnam with movies like Maunaragam and especially Nayagan. So I had been his fan. And while living in Pilani, I became a big time theater enthusiast. I would act in college dramas, got to work on the script, and eventually got to direct one as well. And somewhere deep down, my love for that was stronger than my love for engineering. So I wanted to switch to filmmaking. And obviously, we were not connected to the film industry, so to speak. So I thought I would study films and apply for a job, like we were doing for all multinational corporations those days. So that's what I did. I did my master's in film studies in the mass communication and journalism school in University of Florida. It was a 2 year master's course. While I was there, I managed to email Mr. Money and ask him for a job. I had to wait as soon as he came back from the States, but he was already halfway through Dil Se, and luckily for me, I was included in the last schedule of the film. That was my journey. That's how I.
What are your memories from the sets, or were you part of the post production?
When I joined Madras Talkies, Dil Se was like 90% complete. So there was an edit with some key scenes missing, but there was a finished script naturally. So I read the script and then I saw the edit so that I could prepare for the shoot. We knew there was this song that was supposed to be shot, and we knew some action scenes were to be shot. We knew some telephone cuts were to be taken. So we had a 15-day schedule in Ooty and Kerala. That was my first schedule. From May 31st onwards, 98. That's when I started working. What I wasn't prepared for was how a set would function. I hadn't been to a shoot. So it was quite funny when I walked onto the set with all the confidence and the dreams of a youngster who's armed with education, and I was a miserable failure for a few days. It was a very good learning experience. And day one was Chaya Chaya actually. There was this young assistant director called Shah Ali, who became a director later. He was horrible to me. because he had suffered a lot for a year working as the junior most AD of that film. And finally, he had somebody to, he had a bakra. Of course, we have, of course, we are friends for life now. So I can say all of this in jest. And there are jokes about what happened between us that's very unit specific. So it was a very interesting initiation because you have Mr. Mani Ratnam directing the film. You had Miss Manisha Koirala acting, and Mr. Shah Rukh Khan, the biggest star in the country, was playing the lead. And you had other technicians like Santosh Sivan, Farah Khan. Malaika Arora was making her debut, so it was a fantastic shoot. So yeah, I knew from that minute that I was in the right place.
When you say horrible, I didn't understand. Like, what does it mean? Like, what did it do? What did it do?
So, a few years before that, maybe not many, maybe 1 or 2 years before that, I probably should have checked the name of the film. There was a Mahesh Bhatt movie that Shah Rukh sir did. There was a documentary that was on TV those days where you could see Shah Rukh sir with blood on his face, emoting. And the behind the scenes footage of that film showed an associate director standing next to the director giving the lines to him, and he's acting to that. I was looking at it thinking, wow, that's so cool. So you are an assistant director, you actually get to, push the actor directly for a good performance. But in reality, when on day one, actually day zero, morning was the Chaya Chaya shoot. We started the shoot the night before
Yeah.
with the telephone scene. Shah Rukh sir gets this phone call from Manisha, and we are supposed to give off-camera lines. I froze. Didn't know. I just didn't know how to time my lines. Shad obviously did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realized that everybody wants to be in movies. Everybody thinks it's easy,
Yeah.
but to actually work there,
It's tough.
yeah, you need a different rhythm.
Yeah.
Now it's quite comfortable because obviously I've done a lot of movies. I go to a shoot knowing I'm going to be working with 300 people and we're going to have a good time. But on day one, I was just overwhelmed.
You have been working closely with Mr. Mani Ratnam. He gave some of his biggest hits in the 90s, films that are remembered for the music, storytelling. When you look back at the era, not as a colleague, but as an audience, what do you think made these movies like Rosa, Dil Se, Bombay, and various other films connected so powerfully with audiences? Was it music? Was it the storytelling, characters, or something beyond all of that?
For sure, it's all of that. All those good things you listed, essential to good cinema. I think all good directors have their own take on those elements you are talking about. Like Vijayanand had such command over music that you can't imagine his films without the songs in them, right? So there are directors with different strengths. Mr. Mani's strength comes from him being in sync with the times and probably a little ahead as well. Like, for example, his portrayal of women in the mid 80s in the Tamil movies he made, which actually spilled over into Roja and Bombay, which were dubbed in Hindi, and the whole country saw those films. So you will know what I'm talking about. You could see the independence and the confidence and the courage he gave the women characters in the film. They were not just showpieces. They were not just pretty faces who were there for the romance alone. So that's just an example. I mean, if we get into a deep analysis of any director's films, you'll be able to actually pick out a particular element and elaborate. I think with Mr. Mani's films, the way he thought about people mostly from the real world perspective and projecting that onto screen, that made him a very special storyteller in my opinion. So people behaved like how they behave in real life. I'm not saying he was bang on like an art film director. All I'm trying to say is women did not just serve the purpose of a story. They were like real people. They had their ambitions, they had their drive, and that was quite nice to see in the mid 80s. So staying a little ahead of the game by reflecting the real world is probably his biggest strength.
You spoke about his strength, music. So, Mr. Mani Ratnam, a musical genius, and so are you. And you've been part of songs that are really connected with people. When you write today, how do you sense the kind of music really resonates with audiences, especially since the taste has changed over the years?
Yeah, you're very sweet, but I mean, I'm a fan. That's all. Let's talk about the genius of Mr. Rahman. There are moments in the history of art, and specifically in the history of each individual art form, where those moments become milestones. This is exactly the year the Last Supper was painted. This is when the Sistine Chapel was completed. Likewise, in the Indian film music scene, there have been some absolutely fabulous geniuses across generations. And one of the important milestones was the debut of Mr. Rahman, because he brought in a very evolved sense of sound and cutting edge sound engineering to go with this musical genius. And I think Mr. Mani's credit, to his credit, he recognized that. And that probably goes back to what I said earlier. He was always looking a little ahead. I think he heard the sound of Mr. Rahman and realized that that is the sound of the future. So the first album they worked on together, Roja, is a seminal moment in Indian movie history, and it goes with your theme of the 90s Bollywood. I think it influenced the sound of all the Indian filmmakers. The thing is, Mr. Rahman keeps experimenting. We are talking about 33 years later, and every few years he has tried new things. He actually stopped the Mukra Antra structure a while ago, and now he's gone back to it. He stopped using regular voices. He brought in a lot of new singers, and he keeps experimenting. He keeps collaborating with other talents. So the music of our movies, be it the 10th century Ponniyin Selvan or a gangster film like Chekkachivandavanam or a period film about a based on a real person like Guru, the distinct contrast in the soundscape that he's creating for each film.
How does collaborating with A.R. Rahman, influence the way you approach storytelling or for writing songs?
Well, I've written only 6 songs for him, so I cannot really speak like an expert. But as a fan and as an assistant director who have been part of many of their collaborations, I can probably speak from that perspective. Usually, Mr. Mani and Mr. Rahman work in a very open, loosely structured manner. It's not like there is a story and you have song one, song two, song three here. Give me tunes for this, and there'll be two, three options for each song, and then they pick out the best tune. I'm sure they've done that in the past. I'm sure that's how they worked earlier, because that was the norm. But eventually, over many years, they have also built a library of great tunes from their conversations, from their discussions, from their sharing of ideas. Rahman sir composes a lot of interesting tunes, and they are with Mr. Mani. From the bank, he picks out stuff while writing or while narrating stories to us, or after he comes up with a few ideas, he'll probably listen to some tune and say, hey, this one will go well with us. So that is usually the starting point. Then he calls Mr. Rahman and says, you remember that tune you gave me 4 years ago? I think that's going to fit in very well for this film. Check it out. So Rahman sir might have forgotten because he creates so many. Or he will quickly, after listening to one line, he'll go into, yeah, I know how to improve that. So they will complete the tune, and then it goes to the songwriter. The emotion comes from the tune itself. So you asked me how they use music for storytelling. I think story inspires the music director to create music, or sometimes the music kind of enhances the storytelling. So it's a very interesting creative cycle until they both come to a point where they say, this is perfect for this. Let's do it. And the song is written according to that.
Madras Talkies has given some of the most beautiful romantic films, but What made them special that with every film there was a message attached to it, like something deeper. It had something deeper to say, like a thought, a message, a layer of emotions. Do you think you can bring back that kind of cinema today, the kind of stories we used to narrate in 90s or the early 2000s?
I think a very honest approach, straightforward approach would require a thematic necessity to tell a story. Like, for example, you see a film, and when people ask you, what is it about? You should be able to quickly say that it's about this in maybe a few sentences. So that becomes the emotional core of the story, right? It can be a romance, it can be an action film, but what it is about is what any movie boils down to. It need not be something moralistic, it need not be an advice. But the reason for that movie to exist lies in that what is it about question. So when you are able to define a film in a few words, then you can probably expand on it and make it good, and the core will still be visible at the end of the film. Will we see that? Yeah, I think storytelling is evolving, right? Like everything else. Like what we got to see in the 90s might have something to do with what we got to see in the 80s. For example, there was one television channel called Doordarshan in the 80s. The whole country had to watch only that channel, and that too from 6 to 10 in the evenings. The 80s were influenced by the 70s, which was a no television era, like the eras before that. So in the 90s, cable TV came in the beginning, and we got to see some shows and programs throughout the day. Then post 93, 94, full-time movie channels opened up in Hindi and in English. So for the fans, for the consumers, so to speak, there were many options, and we also got more exposed to many stories. So we could understand stories from this experience of having consumed many different narratives in many different forms and languages. So, how you create a film from a thematic idea was done in a particular way. Now, 30 years down the line, we are even more exposed to narratives. We understand stories really faster than the earlier generations. That doesn't make us smarter, that just makes us different. We are just more exposed to this particular art form. We also know how movies are made. So when you're watching something, you're always wondering whether it's VFX or whether it's done with some trickery. The magic has, some people say, reduced. I would say the magic has changed. The magic of movies is different, and that directly affects storytelling. You can't tell stories the same way you used to say 30 years ago, like just like how they couldn't say, like how they were said 30 years before that. So the theme remains the most important point of a film, but how we build around the theme, the screenplay, the presentation, the making, everything has changed. Everything has to change to suit the audiences of this era.